Now, this is my honor to introduce George Freeman. He's appointed Minister of State in the Department for Science, Innovation, and Technology. But what's really important to know is that he was 15 years career in bio VC. So he understands us. He understands the importance of capital allocation. He was elected in 2010, and he was the first minister for life science, the first minister after that for agri-tech, then the first minister for the future of transportation, and now the first minister of state in the Department for Science, Innovation, and Technology. George, thank you for keeping your bio so short so you have more time to share with us everything you care about. Thank you.
Great. Look, thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here, partly because they don't let me out as much as I'd like, partly because I used to be in the business of long-term investing in tomorrow's technologies, and being back with the people who are doing it is always a pleasure, and more than a pleasure, it's important, because if I'm not listening and hearing and following this event and seeing where you want to be investing, then I'm not doing my job for you or for the government. And having lost the first half of my hair building businesses back in the Wild West days of bio venture capital in the 90s and noughties, we had a 50 million fund, the first dedicated UK biotech fund set up to fire hose 50 million into 10 startups in 3 years with a 78% IRR. I did look across occasionally at the long-term, sector-specific, industry-knowledgeable corporate venture sector and think, I suspect their model is more sustainable, is more resilient, is more long-term, and these are the big corporates who are pulling through into their supply chains, into their pipelines, the innovations they actually need, whereas we were taking incredible bits of science, technology, extraordinary professors, pumping money at them quicker than they knew how to absorb it, and try and create value fast in a hurry. So I'm here genuinely as someone who's seen what you do, and somebody who, when I was investing, was always asking, are you talking to the corporate venture funds? Because if pharma, if bio, if ag corporate venture funds aren't taking us seriously, then I'm not sure I should be either. So it's a pleasure to be here with such a lot of global expertise in London on this beautiful midsummer's day. And I'm not here by accident, and I just want to set out for you, firstly, what the Prime Minister and I are trying to do, and what the mission is. Say something about where I can see, and I'm trying to create, some really tangible opportunities for deep, long corporate venture investing in our ecosystem. And the question I really want to leave with you, and I would relish feedback after this, follow me on LinkedIn, email me at minister.freeman@dcit.gov.uk, is these are volatile times in VC, but I think this sector is showing and demonstrating a real resilience and an ability to do long-term, deep investing in the resilient supply chains of tomorrow, which is exactly what we need. So my question is, how can we, HMG, Department of Science, Innovation, Technology, my officials, how can we better engage with, connect with, work with corporate venture to draw you into the investment ecosystem that we're building? So let me describe that ecosystem and then leave that question with you, and I would relish follow-ups, and I would, if there's an appetite in the room, Dominic Johnson, Lord Johnson at the Department of Business and Investment Trade, and I work closely together, me like the R&D Director for UK PLC, he like the International Sales Director. We meet monthly, we do a proper operation, it's an Excel spreadsheet, we keep the deals we didn't land in italics because I want to learn what the customer was saying they didn't like, and we're landing lots of inward investment, but I would like to sit down with those of you who are really interested in this landscape and have a bigger conversation about what we can do to develop more investable propositions for you as key people in key supply chains and sectors. So look, I'll just describe that ecosystem. Firstly, it's very good to be back. Thank you for that introduction. various people have said I'm in my 5th ministerial role. Michael Gove will say he's just doing the same thing he's been doing for 13 years, which is reminding every Prime Minister as they've come and gone that the only way we will get this country out of the boom and bust politics, which is connected to the boom and bust economics of short-term, volatile, boom and bust financing, is by properly investing in the science, research, technology, innovation of tomorrow, shifting this country from a service economy with deep science in silos and occasional bursts of innovation, incubating NASDAQ, not connecting the city properly to our supply chains, and not properly competing in the global race for investment, or taking our science and technology enough around the world to solve the big challenges that the world urgently faces and for which there is a wall of money out there. And so my big mission has been, look, if we galvanize properly through this series of crises, crash of '07, pandemic, Brexit, war, if we galvanize properly, we could be the generation who in 10, 20 years will be bouncing our grandchildren on our knees and saying, you had to be there, we woke up and smelt the coffee, and we reposition this country very close to, not in the European single currency and political institution, but a very close trading partner with Europe, a regulatory aligned partner, the pathfinder test bed for the technologies of tomorrow, and we've connected much better with global markets. We took our S&T around the world and we helped the world double food production in 27 years. Yep, that's what we've got to do, double world food production on the same or less land with half as much water and energy. We have to prepare for the next pandemics, deal with plant, animal, human health pathogens, clean up space, get plastic out of the oceans, and stop 100 million people walking out of Africa. These are big development challenges which this country has got huge amounts of science, research, technology, and innovation to deploy into. And that is the mission, and it's a 10-year program, as the life science mission was that I set out 11 years ago. And I can't tell you, first of all, just what a breath of fresh air it is for me on that mission to have Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister and Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor. You need a team, and a team of ministers who've got business backgrounds and get this. I'm not going to pretend the last 18 months, 2-3 years haven't been volatile. They have. But to use a cricket term, Joe Root is back at the crease, and we're not scooping this one over our heads. We're playing with a straight bat and building confidence again and restoring confidence in this country's long-term economic investability. So this is how we're doing it. Firstly, we've put the science, research, tech, innovation piece at the heart of government. If we're going to take the big decisions, pull the new levers we've got, whether you voted for them, I didn't, or not, we've got regulatory freedoms, we've got procurement freedoms, we're not bound by state aid. You need a place to do it. So we set up the National Science and Technology Council alongside the National Security Council, and that's where we decide what we're going to do with our golden share in OneWeb, what we're going to do, the £6 billion vaccine procurement contracts we placed in return for big R&D contracts. We're moving the way we operate after 45 years of being a compliant service economy in the single market. We're now thinking more muscular and strategically about S&T. We've created a whole new department for it, and that doesn't solve the problem, but I can tell you in the machinery of government, if you haven't got a department, if it's just me, one minister, we now have a Secretary of State, a Minister of State, 2 parliamentary under-secretaries of state, and a whole machine, which is important in the Whitehall strip when you're competing for all the things we have to compete for. Thirdly, budget. Does anyone know what the UK is spending on public sector R&D over this 3 years? I'm not surprised you don't, because very few people in government do. It's the first question I ask, because government works in silos. Everyone will tell you what their units respond. Well, it's 52 billion over 3 years. I'm only responsible for 75% of that. Other departments have got, MOD's got a chunk, Health has got a chunk, Agri's got a chunk. Now we're properly mapping it and deploying it and thinking about where it's going, what we're investing in, and crucially in the new department, I'm thinking like an investor. I never want to use the word spend. We were talking about science spend. I think of this as investment in the industries of tomorrow, and it's painful work, blood on the walls, we're mapping out what are we investing over this 3-year comprehensive spending review by sector? Life science, 9 billion. Space, 6 billion. Clean tech, no one knows. We're going to get the numbers, but at the moment it's split between DBT, Department of Energy Security, Net Zero, and us. What are we spending on you get the idea, all the sectors of tomorrow, and what is the private sector spending alongside it, and how are those two numbers correlated? So we're taking a proper business planning approach to how we do this. And basically, the mission is divided into two parts. Science superpower and innovation nation. Let me just explain what I mean by that. Science superpower is, if we're going to go out and attract all this global money and tackle these problems, we need to think, breathe, project, and operate in that space. And I'm delighted to say that in the integrated review, which is the government's core operating software, it's the document that sets out at the heart of number 10 in the Cabinet Office our view of the world and our place in it. This is paragraph 1. So it's not a sidebar on other things. This is what we've decided as a nation we're going to do over the next 10 years. And a big part of that is international. So I've defined science superpower very specifically, putting KPIs on it. 1, world-class science, never taken for granted. We have 2 of the world's top 3 universities. We need to keep it that way. 2, not just studying global problems, but tackling them, helping to solve them. We can't do them all, so let's lean in and use our leverage in polar research, in agri-tech, in bioengineering, in a whole raft of areas where we are particularly strong. 3, talent, making sure we're in a global network of talent, positioning the UK as a talent hub, and we will never be a science superpower behind a closed visa wall. The Prime Minister knows that, I know that. Tackling the illegal boats in the Channel is about creating the space for us then to open up, as we've done, the student visas, the high-achieving visas, the entrepreneurs' visas, those fast-track visas for the people we need. 4, global investment. We need to attract much more money into the UK to match this public commitment. And 5, we need to be a muscular defender of the values, principles, and rules of science and technology. For example, intellectual property, where 5 times I've resisted the WHO ask that we water down intellectual property rights post-COVID. Would be the wrong thing to do. BioNTech wouldn't exist without intellectual property rights. Moderna wouldn't exist. So we're trying to be a strong supporter for the basic fundamentals globally. And my argument is, we'll never be a science superpower, wonderful vision though that is, unless we're also an innovation nation. And that means making sure we're creating an ecosystem where we properly scale up, spin out, scale up, deploy, and then crucially, regulate, procure, and then float in the city those technologies. I'm not going to list through all the money we're investing, but I just tell you on our dashboard, on my whiteboard, you will see technologies of tomorrow, sectors of tomorrow into industries of tomorrow. That's the mission. And on my right-hand side is the life science industry, which is the big one. In many ways, it's the one that's right on the front line of reinventing itself, reinventing how we do medicine. We're investing $9 billion over this 3 years, and we're putting in place a whole series of structures to make sure we are the regulatory and procurement testbed. The new medicines of tomorrow are going to blow the traditional NICE, MHRA, siloed model out of the window. And if you have a digital drug that sends a signal on its own bioabsorptive profile, is it a device? Is it a drug? Is it a diagnostic? The technology is converging all of the traditional silos. So in these 7 disease missions, we're creating digitalized pathfinders for the smart models of regulation and procurement into those new markets. Life science and then space, agri-tech, clean tech, automotive, materials, robotics. So that's my portfolio. We've identified 5 strategic technologies in the global race where we think we have to move, and these are as much geopolitical and to do with economic security, and that's AI, future of telecoms, semiconductors, quantum, and engineering biology, and I'm leading on the quantum and the eng bio pieces. And this is us making sure we're laying the foundations so that we build on our real strengths and we make sure that we're working with our allies around the world to make sure that we don't lose strategic supply chain resilience. The one I'm most proud of is fusion. So fusion energy is the one that we've pulled from deep science, left-hand side of the whiteboard, through to sector of tomorrow most quickly. Off the back of the results last year at Culham, the Atomic Energy Authority, we've done the same thing we did with genomics 10 years ago. We've set up a company called UK Industrial Fusion Solutions Limited. We're going to allow investors internationally to invest in it. We've given them a decommissioned power station. There isn't a plant, a wildflower, or a Liberal Democrat NIMBY in sight. We're going to build the world's first spherical topomac. We're going to turn it into a campus for fusion. And we're going to crowd in investors in the fusion economy who want to help us connect fusion to the grid, not in 50 years, in 15 years. And we're serious about it. We think fusion is absolutely key if we're going to get to the next phase. It's been 20, 30 years forever, like genomics was, until it came. And when it comes, it's huge. And we're looking to structure that so that international investors, corporate investors in the energy sector and elsewhere can come on board with us. So I won't run through all the numbers of all the money we're investing. I hope you can see the general plan. Something is going right in this country as well as all the things that aren't. If I tell you that the City of London is now well up in terms of our deep tech investment, 20x rise in VC investment in the UK since we came into office. In biotech, we've gone from 450 million a year to 4.5 billion a year being raised. We've gone up a whole order of magnitude. And what's really interesting is it's not just those scale-up companies, but the clusters. I mean, not just Oxford now, last year raised 2 billion for its own startups. This is off the scale of, this is a whole step up. Cambridge is initially just behind. But it's also all around the country. We're seeing now Glasgow, Satellite City, Edinburgh, Quantum, Superfast Computing, Warwick, Robotics, South Coast Marine Tech, Norwich, Agri Clean Tech, Digital Health in Leeds, Fusion on Teesside. We're mapping them. There's about 25 of these clusters. And this autumn, we'll be unveiling a digital interactive cluster map. And I want to make it possible for people to invest in those clusters. It is starting to happen. 300 million private money last week for Harwell. There are 5 funds now, the LNG funds, Northern Gritstone, beginning to employ serious private money into the infrastructure behind these clusters. And so the 3 big things I'd leave with you, that when people say to me, how are you going to do this? The things that make me confident. The first is the co-investment piece. Jeremy Hunt and the Chancellor's team are working on unleashing the pension funds. We basically shut down pension funds' ability to invest in S&T after the last crash. They're making those reforms. We're reforming the way tech transfer offices work, and I'm reforming the way universities are rewarded so that we create that ecosystem so that there's a lot more incentive early on. I'm not in charge of tax policy. The Treasury do that. But unless we incentivize people to grow companies beyond a quick spin, but through, then we won't feed the pipeline that corporate venture needs. So there's a whole co-investment piece. There's a huge regulatory piece. And as well as, you know, we haven't done badly. We've changed the law on gene editing so we can get on and lead in the drought-resistant crops, the blight-resistant crops. We've led the world in the regulation of fusion. We said it's not fission. It'll be regulated differently, and that's why we're moving. And we were the first to set up the space regulations. And I could be making a big announcement this autumn about leading in clean space, sustainable space. So we are moving on reg. I want to go further and create 6, 7, 8, 9 tangible test beds, physical designations, where there'll be world-leading test beds for tech. It might be autonomous vehicles, Milton Keynes, Corridor, agri-genetics, EngBio in Norfolk and Norwich, all around the country, places where you can come and test, and then these clusters. And I hope, as corporate venture players, I hope this isn't the first time you've heard it. If it is, you will hear it more and more, and my vision is that you will start to see this as a tangible, investable proposition, and you can see where you can start to play into it. You already have very strong networks in your own sectors, which is fantastic. And I genuinely want to, one of my KPIs is, are we getting more corporate venture into the UK ecosystem? So can I close just by thanking you for all you do? It's an unsung story, I think, in many ways. That's why I wanted to come today. To me, you are the key players in this long-term ecosystem, and I need to make sure that we're building either side of you and working with you. Please follow up and let me know what we can do to make this ecosystem work better for you. Thank you.